prime thing is you have to win.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. I'm your host, Ted Nguyen. That's Marshall Newhouse. We are coming at you guys live after the Raiders lost to the Chargers in LA, 31-14. And this game is coming off of a week in which there was a lot of drama. Chip Kelly fired. Reports that Chip Kelly was messing up on play calls and that sort of deal. Then Pete Carroll came out and said, no, it's not true. And then there's another anonymous report from players that said it was true. So who knows what went on? But Greg Olsen is the new offensive coordinator. He got to call the plays today. The Raiders had how many yards was it? 156 total yards?
Yeah, you know, they count in the sack yardage, but yeah, it's about 156 total yards. So not exactly far and away better than what they've been doing before.
No, that is not the production you want when you make a change like that. But I mean, there were certain aspects of the offense that looked better. There were some nice play designs, like the big Brock Bowers play action 27-yarder to start the game. I thought that was a pretty nice fake to Ashton Genty to get Bowers wide open. His first touchdown was nice, where they were able to get the defense to move with some motion and got him wide open down the seam for a touchdown. And they were doing a very intentional job of trying to get Ashton Genty the ball, not just as a runner, but as a receiver. He had 8 targets today, and they were trying to throw him a bunch of even more screens than that. But the Chargers were kind of on top of that. Did you notice any other differences with Greg Olsen calling the plays now?
I think there was just a different type of consistency with whether they're in gun. Part of that report that we talked about was that Geno's stance or him being in gun versus under center was tipping plays. I thought they were trying to rectify that as far as balancing things out. You can kind of go too far from that, because if you're just trying to break a tendency but it's a bad play, then what's the point? But it felt like they were trying to balance that out a little bit. It felt like Greg Olsen was trying to intentionally, as you said, get Genty the ball. Brock Bowers only had 4 targets, but 2 of those were touchdowns. And so you can respect that kind of production, assuming that defenses are keying in on him. We saw Jack Besh get involved a little bit. I think he went out temporarily with an injury, but he was trying to get active, and he got a couple passes in there. And so I think the ball spread around a little more. It felt like the offense was less predictable in that way as far as where Geno was going with the ball, but they really couldn't run consistently. I think the one good drive was that one in the second quarter, I believe. They went like 76 yards, and it felt really balanced. It felt really competent. You had touches to Genty, you had play action passes, and then ultimately kind of a levels concept to Bowers there in the end zone for a touchdown. And we just didn't see much of that before or after for the offense. Part of that is, they were trying new guys out. Meredith is a little banged up, so he didn't even dress. They had Rogers there at guard, and then they brought him up off the practice squad to play. He was in there a little bit. I think those guys looked like young players who the game was moving a little too fast for them at times. I can see some potential there, but they're definitely still projects, which we understood, but I can respect and appreciate them getting some run, so they're getting a little bit of taste of what it's really like. But yeah, as far as Greg Olsen's impact on the offense, we can look at the total yards. That's one thing. But to me, it was negligible. It felt more consistent as far as Chip Kelly not marrying run concepts to pass concepts and not helping in protection and doing all those other things. So, but it felt more consistent in that realm. But does that really matter if you still only produce the offense that they produce? And so, listen, we always knew that the Raiders' problems were bigger than this. It just spoke to the chaos that's going on in this organization right now, that there's conflicting reports, and I call it CYA. Everyone's trying to just cover their ass, but conflicting reports about what was going on behind the scenes. So I think they'll improve The Chargers versus defense, coached by Jesse Minter, a defense coordinator. It's a tough unit. But they could have been had. I mean, people have scored points on them. They've run on them, and the Raiders couldn't seem to really do a whole lot outside of a couple drives and outside of Brock Bowers just being insane. And so, more of the same from the Raiders, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think it at least stings a little bit less than knowing that you got the ball into your best player's hands.
Sure.
You know, you're going to Bowers. At least you're going down swinging with the guys that give you the best shot. You know, like
Yeah.
it'd be a lot worse if you scored. You know, you only scored 14 points or whatever, and Brock Bowers had, you know, like 3 targets or
Right.
something like that. And but going back, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. Going back to the Ian Rappaport report in that article, he said that Chip Kelly didn't get to run his offense. He had to run a lot of things that Pete Carroll wanted him to run. He had to go away from the shotgun and go more under center, which is what Pete Carroll wanted to go to. They linked it to the Shane Waldron offense and basically implied that Chip had to run Chip had to run that type of offense and didn't really get to do what he wanted as an offensive coordinator. And obviously that just speaks to the level of dysfunction in this offense, because like, you don't pay a guy to be the highest paid offensive coordinator and not allow him to run his offense. But like, why would you even want to bring that guy in the first place if you're just going to dictate what he can do? Maybe it was a Tom Brady hire and it was forced upon Pete. But again, that's just dysfunction. That's ideas and philosophies not lining up together, which is what we've seen from the Raiders in the past. And honestly, there's more that, you know, I can't tell you guys right now, but like, it's just like
you got the inside knowledge, man. I need to get some of that.
It's as bad as it's ever been. And you know, I don't know if Pete's gonna last after this year, but I've never seen that before, where you bring in a offensive coordinator, you just don't allow him to run his offense.
Yeah, that's again, the Chip Kelly offense in the pros has a expiration date. I don't think it was this, you know, groundbreaking offense, but at the very least, you would like the players to understand what the attacking plan is at week to week, and it not be mixed because of someone's pulling the strings and influencing the coordinator in a different way. Chip Kelly likes a lot of gun. He likes things more up tempo. He likes you know, the running back being involved off center when you're in the gun, which I think is going against current trends. So you know, I have doubts about how effective of an offense it would be. But the thing we talked about when I played offensive line was, if all 5 of us are at least doing the same thing with the same mentality, the same approach, we have a chance to be successful. It's when, you know, in protection and one guy's doing something different that things start to break down. And even if Chip Kelly's offense maybe wasn't the best, we will never know, because it felt like his ears being tugged this way and his arms being tugged this way, and we didn't get a full picture of what his new approach coming from Ohio State to running an offense in the NFL. He was still had to use Geno Smith as his quarterback. Ashton Jeanty still would have been his running back. So all things would have been the same, but we at least would have been understanding of what he was trying to do. We could see the picture. If we can see the bigger picture on the approach, then we can either say, hey, I support this. I see where it's going. I like this. Or I'm like, I don't know what they're doing here, but it's just not for me. But I understand the why. But there was at no point, you know, this report kind of backs that up, of us understanding the why. And it sounds like there's just multiple conflicting voices, and no organization, no offense, no defense, no group can just row in the same direction when you've got that kind of disorganization. And the players feel that. I guarantee you, some of these players who are in their first and second and third years feel how, you know, as the week is going on, despite all the B-roll we see of Pete Carroll wrestling with players and joking in warm-ups and stuff like that, they feel the disconnect. And that's a tough thing to overcome, because we're not dumb. We see what's going on. We don't hear everything. We don't see all that backdoor, backroom conversation, but we see what's going on, and it shows itself on the field. and that's just unfortunate. No one's going to come out of this looking pretty. And as time goes on, it feels like this needs to be a full restart. They have to reset in some capacity, more so than just firing Chip Kelly and trying to scapegoat him in really weird tabloid backhanded ways.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it does feel like he's being scapegoated. Like, I, I agree with you. I don't know if his offense would have worked out because, like you, I prefer an under center offense. That's based on the run and play action, and I thought he was going to do some of that stuff. But we'll never know what his offense was really going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really tough to be a play caller when you have so many voices in your head because you can't do what you want to do and what you think is best, even though you were hired for your expertise. You have to do get input from this guy, get input from this guy, and like imagine you're trying to call a play, you're trying to set things up, you have the play clock, and then you're looking down your sheet, but you're not confident in making any calls because you know that you have to do this or you have to listen to this person and put this input in. So it was a very tough situation for Chip, and I just don't know any play caller that could work in that type of environment. So hopefully Greg Olson's given more of a clear lane so he could call what he wants and at least put his stamp on the offense. Or else it's just not going to work. And I thought there was some encouraging signs today. Um, you talked a little bit about Mafi and Charles Roger finally getting some PT. That it's hard to Dante Thornton, man. It just does not work. Like he's just so far behind in his development. Like we want to get young guys out and play them, but he's just so far back in his development with everything, like technique, route running.
He just doesn't have a lot of presence with his where his body is in space. Like the interception that Gino threw on the left sideline. Gino, throwing that where only his guy can get or it goes out of bounds. Okay, fine. But Thornton didn't allow he let the defender kind of nudge him to the sideline. You're supposed to restack once you get past your defender and allow the quarterback room on the sideline to throw passes like that. And it's just little things like that where it doesn't look like the polish is there. And that's understandable from a younger receiver, but it doesn't look like he's progressing in that way at all. And speaking more about Greg Olsen, he's got more of a West Coast pro style background. So I expected to see more in rhythm passes, more timing routes, and you saw a couple of them, but I think those are really detailed it's a detailed style of play calling. Receivers have to be where they're supposed to be. It has to be a 3-step slant. It has to be a 5-step slant. They've got to be where the quarterback expects them to be. And so that's going to take a little more time, which again goes to show why this BS of having multiple people's hands in the cookie jar all season has just feels like it stunted the entire offense. And maybe the offensive ceiling was here and they've only reached here, but we'll never actually know because it feels like everything has just been a speed bump, both from the quarterback to the line, to the receivers and everything in between. So it's unfortunate. It's not a good way to consistently run a team. And they've got to figure it out because obviously they're eliminated from playoff contention statistically. There's the only thing left to play for is pride. But now they're starting to look into draft season. And that's just sad. And that stinks. And you see Max's frustration there at the end of the game with that personal foul on Herbert. But I feel for these guys just because, the players can only do so much. We've got to perform on the field. We're supposed to be coached and prepared beforehand and during the game. And it feels like the players have been failed a little bit. They own some of the culpability as far as their performance. I think some of the guys are just not talented enough right now or not in the right position. But it also feels like they're being let down from the coaching position, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think Tom Brady is coming in and he was supposed to clean up some of this dysfunction, but at the same time, he's never been in this role before. He's never.
We don't even know. And maybe maybe that's something we're not ever supposed to know. But most teams will try to make it somewhat clear. This is the what he's in charge of, or this is his actual level of influence. We actually don't know. We don't know if he's got an earpiece after he's calling his game for Fox and calling into the front office. We don't know if he's there talking to them in meetings virtually or whatever on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have no idea on the spectrum of how involved he is now, how involved he wants to be, how involved they're going to allow him to be. So that in and of itself tells you that there's not a clear plan. And that to me is an extra frustrating part of this.
Yeah. And my assumption is he does have a lot of power and a lot of say in these hires. And it's almost like he's playing a team president role without actually being given that title. But he's never had experience in this role before. So, I think Brady will be good at whatever he wants to be in the long term. Like you could see him getting good at being a commentator. Like his first year was kind of rough, but he's getting better now.
For sure.
Because he's going to work his ass off in whatever role you put him in. And, he obviously knows football, but being in this role for a first time, it feels like he's made a little bit more of a mess than really cleaning things up with the Raiders. So, yeah, I mean, we could go on about this topic another time, but I mean, the bottom line is this week we've learned a lot more about the dysfunction going on in the organization, and it just is messier than, or just as messy as it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, these things go hand in hand. We see about dysfunction and disorder in the front office, and what's the product on Sunday? Dysfunction and disorder and losing. They go hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, let's get back into talking about the game a little bit. One positive light was, man, Brock Bowers again looked like the best tight end in the league.
It's him and a tier by himself right now. It truly just is. I appreciate them pointing out in the broadcast, and it is true that him being in line is a mismatch, but also him being split out wide against the corner is a mismatch.
That's rare.
He is a true dynamic tight end, and it's just a blast to watch him play. The Raiders can rest easy knowing they've got this guy locked up. At the very least, they figured this one out.
Yeah, it's like they got Max Crosby on the defensive side of the ball, and they kind of have his equivalent on the offensive side of the ball. And like you mentioned, when you split out a tight end out wide and he could beat corners consistently, that's very rare. Like, Gronk was good at doing it. But I mean, Gronk is a Hall of Fame type of tight end. And he beat that corner on a goal line fade twice on that.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
On that drive. One they got a late timeout, and then the second one was like one of the best catches that I've seen from a tight end in a long time. Like I did not expect him to catch that ball whatsoever when I saw the trajectory of where it was going. So like you have Bowers who is making plays now without like a huge play action threat, without creating mismatches inside with linebackers. He's just straight up winning his matchups. So like imagine what he can do when you get into a system or have a team that will create opportunities for him. And it's going to look a lot like that first play where he got that 27-yard catch untouched, because he's just a mismatch for almost any position that will match up against him.
Exactly. And he uses his big body in those kind of one-on-one outside opportunities, but his size when he's going across the middle means that your quarterback has a huge radius to throw to, and whoever is trailing him has to know that he can run the full route tree. And so that doesn't allow them to jump as many routes. They can try to body him up and play more physical, but he's got speed to challenge the level of physicality they want to play. And then, again, you lead him, and he can run after the catch, and he's got no speed to challenge the secondary after that. He's just a dynamic tight end. And they've just got to build an offense that highlights him. Everything to me moving forward has got to be about getting Genty the ball in space with a chance to break tackles, because he is still consistently doing that, even though it's sputtering in this offense. But that is a strength of his. And then it's about getting Brock Bowers the ball in space, and you build around that in all the other areas. And they need a lot of help. But those two guys, to me, are home runs. in the moving forward as young guys.
Yeah, and it's funny. Genty, at the beginning of the season, Genty was trying not to run like take on guys head on
Yeah.
because like he was told like you obviously that's a strength of his, but you don't want to do it too often because you want to like save your body a little bit and
Yeah.
try to avoid juke
Forget
guys.
that, man. Yeah, that's out the window, man. Yeah.
But in this game, it just seemed like he was like, "Screw that! I'm going straight through guys."
He's a ball player, man.
Yeah.
You got to just let him do his thing. And unfortunately, a lot of his touches came just from checkdowns, but that's fine. I'm mad. I'll never be mad at a checkdown. This Chargers defense was prepared. They saw the Cowboys game and how heavy the Raiders can throw play action and what those look like, and they just made Geno check it down. And I would do the same thing. This offense, as limited as it is, you eliminate just the big play opportunity, and then you rally and tackle football, and that's what they did. But Genty did his best. But in a high functioning offense with other weapons that take attention away from the defense, he's going to thrive. He's going to absolutely thrive. And I hope to be here when that happens and be able to highlight and talk about Ashley Genty more.
Yeah, and I think they did line up an empty. They split him out at wide receiver a little bit. He didn't really get touches in those formations, but I think it's a good sign moving forward that they'll start using him a little bit more dynamically, which is what he needs to be used as right now because they just can't get him quality touches when they hand him off the ball at this time. Make sure you guys leave your questions in the chat. We'll answer a few at the end. Let's talk about the defense real quick. I thought the defense played pretty well for the most part. I mean, 31 points at the end of the day is not good, but I thought they gave them a chance. They got some stops. I thought Patrick Graham fooled Justin Herbert a few times in this game. Like that interception in the red zone. He thought it was man coverage. They passed off, and Kyu Blue ended up with a pick. And there was a few times where Herbert just looked like he had to pause because he didn't know what the coverage was. So that was a good job by Patrick Graham. But there's just again a few times where Devin White gets lost in coverage, like that big Gadsden catch. There's times where they just can't tackle, like that huge Vidal run. So it sucks, man. I think Patrick Graham, he's another coordinator that's dealing with having to work with Carroll's preferred scheme and having to mix what he does with what Carroll wants to do. And it just hasn't been a great experiment so far.
Yeah, I agree. Patrick Graham has shown that he wants to be more of a too-high coordinator, but he still will be a variable guy. And you're right, he's trying to find that middle balance, but that just doesn't allow a guy's culture, his fingerprints to be on defense fully, in my opinion. And so that's tough. They did some really good disguise with Justin Herbert, which we talked about pre-show, is what you have to do against him because he'll eat you alive if you just sit back and one high. But to me, the 192 yards on the ground, they just don't have enough of a muster in the middle, and their interior D linemen are getting pushed around a little too much. Harbaugh likes to run. They talked about his record on the broadcast. When they run, I think it's 25 or 30 times. He's almost undefeated. Like that's what he's trying to get to, especially once you see Herbert's non-throwing hand get hurt. You start to assume, okay, they're going to try to simplify this game, and especially when the Raiders aren't challenging them on the offensive side, he's trying to shrink the game and just pound the ball. And so recognizing that, the Raiders still were giving up chunk plays. That pitch to Vidal on the left side, Devin White took a bad angle, went underneath and tried to tackle Vidal by the shoulder pads up high. Who am I missing? Who got beat? The safety who got beat in the open field in that play. I think it was it Holmes? No,
might have been Holmes on that play.
He also took a bad angle and then broke down and got juked out of his shoes. And then just the pursuit from the rest of the defense. And so the tackling, like you said, has been pretty poor. And then not only did Vidal go off, then they had the backup running back go off. And so I'm not sure what you're expecting when you give up almost 200 yards in the NFL on the ground. So they have a lot of room to improve as well. And then I think that's going to come from a talent perspective outside of Max Crosby and a couple of the younger defensive backs. I like Adam Butler as a veteran, but he can't be your main guy on the interior as from a run defense standpoint. And so they have a lot of work to do because they're just being outmatched right there in the middle, in my opinion, in the run game, and that leads to the passing game and allowing Justin Herbert to kind of do what he wants after you trick him a few times. But it eventually opened up for them.
Yeah, and some of those plays where Herbert was able to get outside the pocket and create were killers too. Like you just can't let him.
He's really good. He's really good. Period. But he's also
Yeah.
good where once Max got upfield, he stepped up quickly and either rolled left or rolled right. The interior pocket was solid, so he could roll laterally and have his eyes downfield and look for the next target. And a lot of first downs were converted that way. And so, not having a defensive lineman who can penetrate alongside of Max Crosby, who is going to get upfield, is going to run the hump and really make the quarterback uncomfortable. Who's the guy who's cleaning that up there in the pass rush? And they just haven't found a guy who can do that consistently.
Yeah. So pocket pusher is just another position on the long
Right.
list of needs for the Raiders to address this offseason. All right, let's get in some questions. X to Ambulance asks, what's up with all the changing at guard and corner during the game? Rodgers and Mafi, then Porter and Kelly.
This is what you guys asked for, right? Isn't
Yeah.
that what y'all wanted? Well, let's see what Caleb Rodgers can do. Listen, Meredith's hurt. They're just down guys. There's a reason you bring up a guy from the practice squad and activate him. They're just down bodies. And so I think Rodgers got the start officially, right? I believe he did. And you get to see what he can do. And I think maybe before the game they were on a pitch count. They knew, hey, that happens quite often where you're like, all right, whether it's injury or young guys, you're going to rotate. Hey, you're taking 2 drives. You're taking 1. You're taking 2. Whatever it is. Maybe they had that already planned out, or maybe they just saw that Caleb Rodgers was just slow and in some of the passing off stunts and getting to the second level in the run game, and they made a decision. I'm not sure, but. Listen, he's got really good size. I know he's very athletic. Playing offensive lineman in the NFL takes a lot of polish, a lot of mental development. People don't kind of forget about that. And so there's a chance that he's just pretty far behind. They've talked about in practice, it didn't look like he was all there. And I understood that from a certain scenario, just because so many plays just can't get started if you're not there. But out there today, it didn't look like he was making mental errors. But then comes the detail in your technique, how you're working with the guys to your left and to your right. And so maybe they had him on a shuttle. But yeah, they're trying to get young guys in, and I appreciate that. And you guys, as fans, have asked for that. And so at the very least, out of playoff contention, you'd like to see what you have in the building. Same on the defensive backfield. We've been clamoring for certain guys to see more playing time so they can see live reps, and that's how you get better faster. So I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like a preseason type of mentality where they're rotating and they're getting film on both guys, so they're trying to evaluate who they think is going to be better. And I guess it is frustrating as a fan if you want to see one person kind of get all the reps. They're doing that with Darian Porter and Caillou Blue too.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's just Pete's way of making these guys compete and seeing who emerges. I'm curious to see how Porter played. I think Caillou ended up getting a bunch of the reps today. Looked like Porter got beat a little bit in the beginning, but didn't look like he was getting just outright beat. It just looked like Herbert hit some really nice throws on him. So I'm curious to check that out. But yeah, I mean, at least Charles Rogers is out there. At least he's out there and he's getting reps, and you can see how he looks a little bit, and he's not inactive. So
yeah.
I think we'll see some more of these young guys play. Charles Grant, I still probably think is a long shot. Maybe the last couple of games, maybe we'll get a rep in or two. So we'll see. All right, next question from USN. Who is supposed to develop the new O-line players? Brendan Carroll.
Yeah, Brendan Carroll. I mean, there's been on top of all the Palace intrigue and the reports from inside and rumors and stuff. as Chip Kelly was getting released and fired from his duty, rightfully so, a lot of the attention went to, all right, who's next? Who deserves to be either stick around or be, kind of shown the door? And there's people clamoring for Brennan Carroll because I understand that the offensive line, as poorly as the injuries have been, and maybe at a couple spots as under talented as they are, you can still put out an effective group with less talent. I've seen it happen all the time. Pete Carroll's O line in Seattle, I talked about this on previous shows, had a guy named J.R. Sweezy, who was a converted defensive tackle. And for the first couple of years, he couldn't pass block a soul. But what he could do was in their zone scheme, he would run and take off and sprint laterally and cut the dog you know what out of any D tackle. That was his strength, and he played to his strength, and it got him a second and I believe a third contract. So it can be done, but that takes in-house intentionality. It takes a development from an offensive lineman, a scheme that complements who you have, and then and then it has to show up on Sundays. And so what we keep talking about is, despite all the chaos and the drama, what is showing up as far as progression in this offensive line unit on Sundays, and it feels stagnant. The offensive line feels stagnant from a details consideration, from combination blocks, guys working with each other, to, at times not being on the same page with calls. Now that might be from the Kelly, tug of war thing, but still, the communication is also on the offensive line coach, and who he happens to also be the run game coordinator. Let's not forget that. So to me, it starts with Brennan Carroll. I don't know what they're going to do the rest of the season or off season, but to me, that is a direct correlation to his leadership.
Yeah, and would you agree that offensive line is the position where the position coach makes the biggest difference?
Yeah, I mean, that's, we have generally 10 to 15 guys in that room, and that's the coach that has the worst ratio of players to one guy who's they've got to learn from. So we have to take advantage of off season. We have to take advantage of extra reps in training camp, and then extra reps pre and post practice, because you're trying to get multiple guys at different positions up to speed and in their skill development. And so, but we spend a lot of time together, but a lot of that can be film study, but a lot of that needs to be one-on-one interaction on the field. And I'm one of those guys that was in favor of the CBA rules that limited some of the unnecessary pounding on guys in the offseason. But I wanted that to go not necessarily towards guys just getting off time, but getting individual instruction. Because the offensive line position, as people have alluded to over and over again, because of the development of, it's a big, complicated issue, but, RPOs and the way colleges offenses are built is directly related to the development of guys when they get to the league. And it's not the entire story, but it's a big part of the story. And so now in the NFL, you need more time for guys to get to where they need to get to. There aren't a lot of Quentin Nelsons who are just showing up day one ready to go. And so that, to me, is even more weight on an offensive line coach's shoulders.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Pete gets kept. Is Brendan Carroll going to continue to be the offensive line coach? It's a hard thing firing your son, but there'll probably be some pressure from up top too. But we'll see what happens with that. All right, last question: if Pete gets the boot at the end of the season, does that help Spytek and Brady get entirely aligned with one another and start a cohesive vision, or is it more likely they keep floundering? I think if Pete does get the boot and they have time to find a coach that they're aligned on, then yeah, I mean, I think naturally that would get them some more alignment on that front. But yeah, I mean, I think the problem with the last coaching search was Ben Johnson I thought he was interested. I did buy that he was interested, but they ultimately chose to go to a team with a quarterback.
Yeah.
So you need a young quarterback, either, in the wings, which the Raiders don't have right now, or they need to have a high enough pick to draft a quarterback to get some of those high end coaching candidates that you want to really start the process with.
Yeah, as far as answering the question, I do think that gives them a chance to be aligned and start with a vision. Does that mean that will be a successful vision? No, but it gives them a chance to like, hey, we're going to do it this way, and we're on the same page. So because we're on the same page, the coach we hire will preferably be on the same page, and then the quarterback that we draft that he's developing will be on the same page, and then the things flow downhill. Both shit flows downhill, but good things flow downhill. And so, yes, I think if they move on from Pete, or re-educate him. That sounds crazy, like something from another world. But yes, that gives them a chance to, hey, let's start from where we believe things are most important, how we want a quarterback to look and feel and sound, and all the potential and the tools, and then on down to other parts of the roster. That is your best shot as a Raiders organization to kind of pick this thing back up and build something that is not just a flash in the pan where you need a bunch of luck, you need a bunch of other teams getting injured, and you're going to luck into a draft pick, but you have a plan that builds a foundation so that you have, you're going to be known as a place where, linemen who either you draft and develop linemen, you draft and develop a corner, and you can't pay him because you've already paid another guy that you drafted and developed, and he's got to go into free agency, and you get a compensatory draft pick. Like the teams that are doing that regularly are no coincidence at the top of the league, and so that's where you want to get to.
Yeah, and I think even if Pete was an awesome coach and an amazing coach, like long-term success won't happen unless there's just alignment between the president, the GM, and the coach. It doesn't mean they have to hold hands and go to dinner every
Right.
day and love each other, but like there has to be an alignment of philosophies, alignment of how to develop players, an alignment of how to deploy those players. And right now, it's just not what we're seeing as far as the product on the field, not what we're seeing as far as the leaks coming out of the building. It's just not going to work right now. So it's hard for me to see Pete surviving and all of a sudden becoming aligned with everything.
Sure.
That's pretty much my conclusion on everything. Like it just like how is it all of a sudden that he's going to coach the way Spytek wants him to coach and play as the players that or agree
Folks,
to play the players.
folks who are watching, do you have a grandparent? My grandparents have unfortunately all passed away, but I remember them. If you have a grandmother or grandfather, ask them to change how they do everything tomorrow. Call them on the phone, tell them to put their clothes on a different way, eat a different breakfast, watch different TV programs. Good luck. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, tell them to start texting you instead of calling you and see how that works out. But yeah, I mean, it sucks. Another negative episode, but it is important that we are getting some information on what is happening behind the doors, and we'll see if they can resolve it because it's ugly right now. But yeah, I mean, again, thank you for joining us. Looks like a pretty good turnout again after a loss. So really appreciate you guys watching and joining me and Marshall. And we will talk to you guys during the week and preview the following game.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, later.